5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
You are inside the Dickster studio.
You actually grew up in West Virginia, right?
That's correct.
Spend much time there?
Well, over the years I would always visit, but I have actually relocated. I moved back here, so it's good to be home.
Yeah, especially now. Is it a good place to hide out from all the evils of viruses and whatever else is happening on the planet?
Well, I don't know if you can hide from viruses, but you can certainly hide from rioters.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier, too. I'm in Montana, so we're kind of opposite ends of the world, and we don't have a lot of it happening right now, but everybody's trying to relocate to Montana. So everybody that has a spare room, a BR&B, a bed and breakfast, everything's
Sure.
full. Everything's full. Texas people, Florida. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, as long as they don't bring their politics with them. Montana and West Virginia are very similar, I think, in the type of people who live here. It's very independent, very rugged. I mean, it's a mountain. It's called the Mountain State, so it's a nice change.
So I've been lately. I don't know why, but there's a lot of documentaries about West Virginia. A lot of documentaries on Arkansas on YouTube, and different families that have lived there for generations, and it's very interesting. I never knew anything about West Virginia. It's not one of those places that that I've ever thought about going to, but now I've been to Arkansas. I made it. That was one of the states that I made it to, but there's a lot to see in West Virginia. One of my old friends from college used to live in West Virginia, and his parents were miners, and it was pretty interesting. We didn't talk about it much, but pretty interesting people there, and
Absolutely.
I think that that part of the world and that different kind of lifestyle that some people have there are kind of what people try to get away and try to achieve here in Montana. Right now, it's Montana's like divided. You have your mountains, you have your prairies, and most everybody wants to be in the mountains. But now there's so many people. It's hard to get into the mountains to a place that most people can afford. People that used to live here a generation ago can't really afford to live here. So I don't know if that's happening out east or not.
No, not in the same way. I mean, there is certainly a flag here, but they've lost population, in this state. The economics are such that it's hard to keep population here. So tough, but they've always been, behind the eight ball in that regard. So see what we can do to help them.
I always used to be a big fan. I don't even know if it still exists anymore, because a long time ago I used to work at night and listening to the Mountain Stage from West Virginia with Larry Gross, and that was one of my favorite things to listen to. And some pretty amazing music out of there. And I don't know, it's I'm kind of a big music buff and fan, so it was one of those things that at the time was a rare thing when you were able to listen to. Really, it was a podcast back then about the Mountain State and musicians from there, and learned a little bit about it. But no,
it's still around.
Is
it's been
it?
around for a long time. Yeah, Mountain Stage for sure.
So what made you decide that you wanted to act and coming out of West Virginia, that's a long stretch to get to anywhere, just about where there's acting going on.
I never was interested in it. I had absolutely no knowledge of it or understanding of it at all. I couldn't have told you anything about it when I first started. A woman, an actress.
There you go.
Her name was Susan Day, and she was a very successful actress. She was America's sweetheart. She had been She was Laurie Partridge in the Partridge Family, and so I met her and we fell in love. And she was, of course, working all the time. And I started to go to her sets, and I was doing some modeling at the time, and I really hated that business. And it was mutual feeling, I think. And so I went to school. I went to class. She got a recommendation for the best teacher in LA, and that's where I went for 3 years. And I learned the method. I'm a method actor, Stanislavski, Marlon Brando, those guys.
Right.
So my teacher actually went to school with Marlon and had been Lee Strasberg's right-hand woman. Peggy Fury was her name. And in my class, it was Meg Ryan, and Sean Penn, and Nick Cage.
Wow.
And I'm name dropping, but I could go on and on.
Yeah.
So it was very competitive, right? And I really learned the foundation of building a character, et cetera. I mean, I'm a theater actor at heart, and it's something that served me well because acting is like golfing in the sense that you have to be able to repeat the swing. You have to be able to repeat the take in acting. So unless you have the foundation of the craft of it, you're going to be in trouble. If you don't know what you're doing and you're, say, suddenly in a scene with Anthony Hopkins, who knows exactly what he's doing, the game is to get the editor to choose your take, right? So unless you can do that time after time, the editor's never going to be interested in what you're doing, and he's always going to choose Anthony's take, and you're going to be on the cutting room floor. So you have to know what you're doing. So that's what I did. I learned how to do it correctly.
So I guess Susan Day's not in the picture anymore?
No, we split up. And so that was actually, hard at the time because I went from being, the red carpets and all the butt kissing and, all that to, just another pretty boy in LA, looking up. So I had to do it on my own, and there could be no other way to do it really. I knew it at the time, but I didn't want to admit it. I wanted to be a victim. So, one person always loves more than the other one usually in these things. And I was that guy.
I've been that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all that guy.
She looks, I don't know how recent the picture is, but I'm looking online. She looks amazing. I remember being totally smitten with her back in the day. I mean, we're talking like 1970 and maybe a few years. I don't know how long Partridge Family ran, but that was kind of the thing then.
I know it was a big deal. It's funny because I went to school at Peggy's class, and the Marsha Brady was in the class, and she wasn't really interested in acting. I mean, I think she felt like she had to learn it, but because she was so famous, So it was funny because I was working with Marsha in the scene, and then I was going home to Susan. So at the time, I thought, I'm probably the only guy in the world, who's got his dirty paws on Laurie Partridge and Marsha Brady.
Right. That's pretty amazing. And then later on, you jump into one of the most watched television programs ever. Your character. So just a little backstory with me. Why I wanted to talk to you was because your character on The Office is, to me, one of the most believable characters on television at the time. And you were Bob in the show. And to me, it was like you were a real person. You owned a business, such a believable character. And the other thing that kind of struck a chord, which is totally ironic, where I was growing up here in Montana, we had a Vance, a place called Vance, and it was a refrigeration and appliances, and the logo was very, very similar. And so I always thought, that there was such a familiarity with that character and the believability. And one of the other things was that I thought was really cool was that they basically cast you. I mean, you're a hero. You're this tall, good looking business owner and whose wife absolutely loves him to death. And, you couldn't do anything wrong, and which I was always waiting for something to happen, but it never really did. And I thought there'd be some sort of conflict there, but no.
They tried their best. I mean, there was again, the writers control the process in TV. Although you're able to still make your mark, obviously, because what they put on the page is, I mean, towards the end of the show, was Bob the Scranton Strangler? Did I hit somebody on vacation in Africa and run them over drunk? I took off from the grand jury. They had all kinds of crazy stuff. But through it all, the whole thing that I was playing, Cameron, was when I learned that he was United States Marine Corps infantry officer in Vietnam. Well, that's really the secret, right? Because that guy, there's nobody in the world in that office that's going to perturb,
right.
Bob too badly. He's been through Vietnam. He led people in Vietnam. That guy's, I've met those guys. I used to write documentaries for A&E, and so I spent a lot of time around the military. And he's a hero in my book. So that's what I did. I mean, and the secret was love Phyllis. In other words, in every scene that I do, it's all about Phyllis. It's never about Bob. It's always about Phyllis. And so that really struck a chord with the women who watched the show. I mean, they recognized Bob and Phyllis as the true love of the show. So that was the irony, was that they were the least likely couple to have true love, but yet they did. And so, that's appealing. I mean, it's amazing to me how many, Vance Refrigeration products, they're everywhere. I mean, the shower curtains and baby clothes and socks and hats and everything, So, the marketing of this character has really, it really caught on. And so it's been a fun ride.
And it's, I don't really pay much attention, but it's one of those, the marketing of that and the merchandise. I don't know of any other from The Office. I don't pay, the Dunder Mifflin hats and shirts and things like that, but,
sure.
but otherwise, Vance is
no,
it's incredible. I think.
Yeah, it is.
That came out of there. And when was the last episode? I mean, when did that air? How long has it been now?
It's been almost 7 years,
Wow.
6-7 years. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, who knew? I mean, it's the first time in TV history, really, that a show has really, grown like this after it's over. I mean, it's bigger now than when it was on.
Right.
I really knew that. I went to Scranton a couple years ago to throw out a baseball pitch at the Rail Riders. That's the Yankees AAA farm
Right
club.
on. Yeah.
Beautiful stadium. So I'm signing autographs. They have an office themed night. So I'm sitting there signing autographs for 6 innings, and it's all kids, 11, 12, 13 years old, and they've all got DVDs, and they all say, I'm binge watching it. And I'm like, who are these kids?
Right.
This was not our audience when we were on the first time. It was 40-year-olds with, NBC loved it because it was the 30 to 40-year-olds with disposable incomes of $100,000 a year plus, right? That's the demographic they love, because the numbers didn't really, our Nielsen numbers weren't ever really that great. We were usually down in the 40s, and but it was the audience, and they buy all the stuff, So the ancillary rights. I mean, you go to NBCStore.com, they're still making a fortune off of all the stuff they sell.
Yeah, my son just turned 14, and so the last couple of years that's his go-to thing, and still I hear it from time to time. I mean, him and I have watched it from one end to the other twice at least, and it's still his go-to. But one of the things that I always think about is there was a lot of transition there and different characters that were added and subtracted. I mean, what's the focus of you guys as a group when you all of a sudden you're faced with losing somebody and having to, I mean, even if you lose a character, it seems like you have to replace that person, even though that next person who comes in isn't that same role. It might be somebody else, but there always has to be somebody else. So what's that transition like, and how does that even work as a procedure?
Well, I always liken it to basketball because that was my game when I was in school. You lose a guy off the team, you got to replace him. The team has to go on, right? I mean, when Steve left, I actually congratulated him. I said, "Congratulations." He's like, "Really?" Because everybody else was mad. Well, not mad, but upset. They were losing Kobe Bryant, right?
Right.
You don't replace Kobe. You try to find people who maybe could help, in some way, but you can't replace them. So I told Steve, "You've done everything you can do with this part. Why are you going to repeat yourself? You'll just be doing the same thing." I mean, he wore the same suit for 7 years. And NBC, as it turned out, they didn't even really make him an offer. I mean, because I guess they thought he's going to ask for Charlie Sheen money, which was, at the time, Charlie Sheen was knocking down $2.5 million an episode, but Steve would have settled for a lot less than that. But the other thing people don't realize is it's when you carry a series like Steve was, I mean, he's in every scene. He has to be funny in every scene. That's an added pressure. I mean, being funny is not easy. It's actually one of the toughest things to do. And so people always used to ask me, "What was he like on the set?" And I said, "Well, he's busy learning his lines for the next scene is what he's doing." I mean, I stayed out of his way. I mean, we were friendly. "Oh, hi, how you doing?" But I mean, it's not like he was a set bunny. I mean, he was very friendly to everybody and part of the crowd. I mean, he was never a prima donna. But again, James Spader, great actor. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, but he can't replace Steve Carell. I mean, neither could Will Ferrell. I mean, the show suffered without him for sure. I mean, it's a different show. So
explain briefly, just so if people don't know what happened there and why he left.
Well, I mean, after 7 years, it's time for a new contract. So you'll notice the people who stayed, Jenna and John and Ed, they all became producers on the show. They got a credit and, you get a raise. I mean, they have to raise your money. That's why they sign you to 7 years. I mean, so they don't have to negotiate with you every year. Otherwise, if you have a hit, you get held up, right? Remember the kids I call them kids, but the actors on Friends, when they came to renegotiation, they all stuck together and they said, "We each want $1 million each."
Right.
And the network was horrified. "Oh my God, we can't pay." But of course they're going to pay them. They had to. It was the biggest show in the world at the time. I mean, so they went and did another 5 years, but that contract was probably another 7-year contract. And, they were happy at $1 million per.
That was kind of a rarity then, though, because, they were equal. It wasn't like, I mean, there was a couple of them that were a little stronger and characters than the others, but I mean, they were equal, and it would have been really hard to do it without one of them. So they had a little bit more influence in getting a contract like that, I would think.
Well, power. They had more power, and believe me, that's why they have the best agents in Hollywood, right? I mean, you get to a certain place, your agent gets better, and they know your value, and they're not about to let the network have you for anything less than that. I was telling somebody a great story the other day. The underrated and terrific actor Walter Matthau, when he was a really big star, he and Jack Lemmon, of course, but Matthau in his own right. If you wanted him to be in your movie, you had to pay him $100,000 just to read the script. In other words, he's not going to read your script and say, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." That's how he got rid of the phonies, right? Because there's so many people running around with a script going, "Here, be in my movie, please." Well, for him to read it, 100 G. So that's really one of the smartest guys I've ever run across.
You mentioned James Spader, and one of the things that, prior to The Office, he had some pretty strong characters that he played, but this narcissistic role that he had and that personality, did you like the character?
Well, I didn't really pay that much attention to it. That season, I didn't work
Right.
on the show because Toby was running the show, and for some reason he forgot about me. So in season 8, I had no idea what happened there. I mean,
Right.
all the other writers would always see to it that I was in episodes, and never enough for me, my taste. Again, when I was a basketball player, I wanted to be in the game and not on the end of the bench. I mean, you're part of the team, but you want to play, right?
Damn right.
So it's actually very humbling, when you're a supporting character and you have larger ambitions, of course, but you also have to accept what they give you. And I was always grateful for it.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible run.
Yeah.
At the time, I think most people, I mean, that was one of our high priorities of the week was getting to the next one. But I mean, the list of characters is vast. I can't even imagine, managing something like that. You ever thought about producing or directing? I mean, you have done that, but something of that level.
Well, no, that's I produced Dickster, and I've produced other things as well, but it's the work all falls on you. I mean, I like to be an actor and just come in and do my thing and go. I mean, then I don't have to worry about all the details. When I was putting together Dickster, the delivery for the distributor, we needed a line through, which meant, you go through every single second of the film and write down the cues and what was said and what was done. And I kept thinking, who's going to do that? And well, it was me.
Right.
I finally was like, wait a minute, I got to be the one to do it. Okay. So I went to work, but all that is it's way more rewarding in the end, because you go, wow, that's mine. I made it, I mean, with the help of other people, obviously it's a collaborative medium, but still, it's so much that I prefer, to either write it or act it, one or the other, or both. Although one time I was doing a piece that I had written, and the line I had to say was, "Can't you see it as the sheer weight of my broken heart that holds me in this state of inertia?" So I was really getting sick of saying that line, because right after that, the actress would slap me and she'd blow the take. And so finally I said to the director, "I can't say this line anymore. Who wrote this?" And he went, "You did." I was like, "Oh, right. Okay. I'll do it. I'll do it one more time. Please tell her not to hit me so hard."
I play a lot of musical instruments, and I can learn just about any instrument, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at any of them, but for example, guitar, I could play guitar. One of the things that I can't do is learn lyrics. I mean, that's one of the hardest things for me to remember are lyrics. I have no idea why. I've never been in the acting environment. So
right.
when you're going to do this, I mean, when you have a scene to shoot, I mean, how much time do they give you? And then they give you a set of lines. I mean, how much leeway is there? I mean, are you stuck right there to what's written on the paper?
Oh, well, in the office, every word is network approved. I mean, there was very little improv. I mean, there's more so in certain other venues. It depends on what the piece is. But no, the goal is to do it exactly the way it's written. You're not there to rewrite it or change it. That's not your job. In fact, the great writer, actor Sam Shepard, who recently passed away, I was a huge fan of him and And one of his most famous plays is True West, which made Gary Sinise and John Malkovich famous. That was the role that launched them. And it's been played by, it's kind of a piece that you have to do. And Philip Seymour Hoffman and John C. O'Reilly did it on Broadway. I mean, switching the roles. The Quaid brothers did it. I mean, Ed Harris did it. I mean, all the great actors have done it. And at the very beginning of the play, it says, "Do not change a thing. Do not change the set. Do not change the clothes. Do not change the words." I mean, so when I was doing it, I was doing the 20th anniversary of it out in Pasadena where he wrote it. And so, I was very cognizant of that. And the people I was doing it with, they thought, well, we'll just fudge around, we'll get close. We'll approximate it. And so I threw a big fit early on. I said, we have to do this exactly the way you wrote it. We have to imagine that Sam Shepard is in the audience every night. We are not going to change a word. We're going to do it exactly. And that's, what I learned. I strived to do that. I didn't change it at all because he didn't want me to. So then I wouldn't have been fulfilling the piece if I hadn't done it the way he wanted me to do it.
There's some lines that got to be hard to say. I mean, there's a little bit of rewriting going on, I'm sure, most of the time. Who's responsible for that part? If there's a line that just doesn't sound right or somebody can't get those words out of their mouth. Well,
the actor and the writer and the director can always come up with a change together. It's funny, I was working with Nick Vallelonga. He's a director writer. Last year, he won 2 Academy Awards for Green Book, and he was directing a film that I was in. And I had this really long. It felt like it was 100 pages long, but it was only 2 pages. It was a huge monologue. It was me explaining all the plot points. Well, then she ran away and did all this stuff. And he wanted me to yell it the whole time. And I was like, hey, because my thing is the orchestra cannot play it crescendo the whole time. You have to build up to crescendo, right? So here I am, I'm yelling it, and it just didn't feel right. So finally I said, can we do a take my way? And he says, oh yeah, sure, go ahead. So we do one where I turn it way down and, make it more, a little more plausible. And he goes, okay, that's great. And then afterwards, I realized he's just going to choose the one that he likes. He's not going to choose the one that, he wanted me to scream it. So that's what he's going to choose, the screaming stuff. He's not going to use the one, even though it was way better. In his mind, he that's what he heard. So that's what I needed to give him.
I've probably been maybe on 4 different movie sets, I was on a reality show and that's really the only time I participated. But one of the things I noticed was producers and directors and everybody that basically works on the program. There's all these different personalities. There's literally, somebody that can come up to you and relate to you and talk to you as a human being. And then there's other people that maybe lower down on the scale that everybody else is lower than dirt. It just amazes me, being that I've been in all kinds of different workplaces that you can put together all these people, including actors who make a lot of money, into this workplace and seemingly get along with each other. I never saw any fighting. I never saw any weird things happen, but yet there's these strong personalities. And it made me wonder, like, how does anybody get along like with this guy? Well,
my goal when I started, Cameron, was to, I never wanted anybody to say, bad things about me when I left the set. I wanted them to say, man, that guy's a pro. That was my goal. I didn't want people to go, what an asshole. He's a prima donna. What a jerk. All those things that are associated with actors. But what you'll find is the bigger the star, usually the more humble and grateful they are. There are times when you have to be a jerk with producers usually, or sometimes with fans, because they won't respect certain lines. That was one thing with Susan that used to drive me crazy was we would be out at dinner and here they would come, and nobody had any respect for our space because they felt like they knew her, they owned her, they wanted a piece of her. Oh my God, there she is. And so, that's a tough adjustment for a hillbilly guy like myself. Fight first and sort it out later kind of thing. So had to learn how to, what that was all about.
A couple of weeks ago, I was kind of reliving my college days, and I think it was my last year of college, and it was on my birthday that Psycho Cop came out. And yes. That's one of those things that has this huge following.
Yeah.
It's blowing up on YouTube. I mean, there's people doing reviews of it now, and it's one that has this cult following. So how does it feel to be part of that? And did you ever think that would happen when you're putting that together?
Yeah, well, I thought it was going to be a mainstream hit. I mean, I signed a 5-picture deal for it, and I thought, well, I'm the next Freddy Krueger.
Right.
But we got buried by the distributor, and the first film we made really wasn't that great. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's different. But I was interested in the character. Obviously, one, it's the title role. And the funny thing was the audition piece for that audition was True West. So I was working on it in class, and I had this huge advantage because I knew it. And I'd just seen Malkovich and Sinise do it. I mean, I was ready to go. And unless you know it, you're going to butcher it. And so I could hear the other actors just butchering it. I was like, oh, yeah, this thing is mine. So, it worked out. But there was a gap between when we made the first one and we made the second one. There was a different director on the second one and a completely different sensibility. So I had to adjust to that. But I always saw the character as more of a comic character than horror. Although I was being respectful to the great horror guys, I like Vincent Price. And my first movie was with Christopher Lee. Talk about a presence. Christopher Lee had been a special forces guy in World War II. I mean, he was a real deal.
Nice.
Very tall, handsome, distinguished. Really impressive to be around. I would just sit in the corner and listen to him. So you're not sharing the spotlight with Christopher Lee. You know what I mean? You're just grabbing a few rays of light off of his shadow.
So since I've been doing this podcast, well, I have another podcast, but over the last year, I have this accumulation of Facebook people. And one of the things that I really, really noticed was the fact that, when they Facebook gives you these friend recommendations, we have all these movie producers out there who do horror movies. And I mean, It's got to be a countless number of people that, by their own effort and by their own pocketbook, they're putting together these horror movies. And of course, other movies as well. But there's this huge fascination now with horror. But there's an amazing effort by these people that literally don't have much that are making movies. How does that happen? Because you did that yourself.
Well, again, horror. If you're going to make an independent film, you want to make either a horror film or a comedy, because those two genres are doable with low budgets. You really have to have a great story. You have to have, everything has to come together. You have to have a great story, great actors, and, some luck. Because all the villains now, nobody writes good villains. I mean, they forget they're interested in gore porn is what I call it, where it's all about the blood and the number of murders and how you murder them. But at its heart, it still has to scare you. There has to be true terror for a horror film to work. I mean, it needs to be psychological terror. It has to be fear. There's a great story about Rosemary's Baby, a Roman Polanski film. And when they were screening it, there's a scene where Ruth Gordon goes into a bedroom and the door to the bedroom is slightly ajar. Well, she disappears out of sight on the other side of the bedroom door. And Polanski was watching the test audience. And at that point, they all leaned over in their seats and tried to look around the door to see what she was doing. So that means that you got him, right? That things are working correctly if everybody's trying to see around the door in a horror film, which, you want to close the door would be my advice. Close the door. Don't open the door. The villain is coming. So that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that at its heart that the character appeals to, or Psycho Cop appeals to people because, there's a sense of, real horror in it.
What year did you start putting together or come up with the concept of Dickster?
Well, something I've been working on for in my mind for some time. I don't know if you've ever seen a film. It's Peter O'Toole film. Of course, O'Toole is one of the greatest actors ever. he did a movie called The Stunt Man, where he plays a film director in it. And he's, he's a very autocratic film director. And so that was kind of where the starting point for it. But as it went on, as I started writing it, Dick devolved into more of a statement on modern horror than it was, on modern Hollywood, really, than, homage to the Peter O'Toole role. I mean, although Dick still has those characteristics, of course, he thinks he's God. That's what Alfred Hitchcock always said. He said on a film set, the director is God. So, a lot of them feel that way. And it actually, when I worked with the famous, infamous director David O. Russell, who is famous for Silver Linings Playbook and all these great movies, he's a real interesting guy because he wants to provoke trouble between him and the actors. So actors aren't used to being treated that way, and so he and George Clooney had a fist fight. I mean, so who fights with their leading man? Very few directors do that because they're the ones that are going to get fired, not the star. I mean, Marlon Brando used to always talk about that at a certain point in the film, the power goes from the director and the producer to the actor. Once they've crossed the point of no return where they can't replace you, then that's when he started to do his thing. Because then he would go, well, they can't replace me now. So they're committed. They're fully committed. So that's when he would, do what he wanted to do, as opposed to what everybody was trying to get him to do.
I think it's amazing to me that so many of the talents out there, and I'm talking about actors, have other talents. I mean, you mentioned the fact that you played basketball, and Steve Carell is a really good hockey player.
Yeah.
Steve Martin comes to mind, who can do just about anything.
Incredibly good.
What is that? Because there's so many actors, they just seem to want to do so many other things and entertain in so many ways and have so many interests. I mean, is that part of the creative process? Do you know any actors that don't do anything but act or boring?
A few, but I mean, you have a lot of downtime where that particular muscle or that particular skill is not being utilized. So when I write, I'm a writer, so that's how I would, spend my free time was writing and, trying to sell movie scripts usually. Right now I'm working on a novel, and it's unbelievably refreshing not to have to restrict myself with the rules of screenwriting. Screenwriting is the most difficult form of writing there is because of all the rules. You have to be able to show it, not tell it, right? In a novel, you can go on about the inner life of the character as long as you want. You don't have to squeeze it into one line, or two lines. You can write pages about how upset I was at, her leaving or whatever. So, the emotional stuff has to be delivered, fast on film, but in literature, of course not. But, the joke is all actors want to be singers and all singers want to be actors. So that's why they all have bands. And, I like the solitariness of writing. I mean, that's really for me, the ultimate in creative is because it's only you that you don't have to answer to anybody else about what you put on the page, right? Until they buy it, then you have to answer. But there's always going to be that if you're trying to monetize your talent.
I think it'd be extremely hard to me. There's of course let me put it this way: actors who are very busy, actors you see once in a while, and
right.
Guys like you who've been in a lot of things that maybe a lot of us haven't seen, but that's one of the reasons I'm not an actor or a real estate agent. No. I just can't. That time between making some money there just causes me too much anxiety.
Well, no, it can be a real tester. That's why on your way up, you really have to have another job that you invest all your money into your career. You're the product. You have to sell yourself, right? Until you learn that, and drive it yourself. I mean, it's funny because one of the most famous movies I ever did was Hollywood Shuffle with Robert Townsend. And what made it famous was, one, he was a black guy and he was upset about the quality of parts that he was getting. You know, he was either a pimp or a drug dealer, and he wanted to play superheroes, right? So that's what he did. He wrote this movie, and we went out and made it. And the Wayans brothers are in it. I mean, it was a lot of people in this film. And he made it for $100,000 on his credit cards in 1987. And it was picked up by Samuel Goldwyn Jr. It grossed $5 million. It launched his career. He became a famous director. He had a TV series called Parenthood on for 10 or 11 years. I mean, it was the key for him. And so when I finally got around to making Dickster, I realized, wait a minute, that was the lesson that Robert was teaching me in 1987. And I was so dumb, it only took me 30 years to figure it out. Make your own movie. Take control. Do it yourself. Quit waiting for somebody else to give you the part. I always liked, they asked Sarah Silverman if she had any advice for young actresses, and she said, yeah, kill yourself. So that seemed to me to be the most distinct and probably best advice you could ever give an actor.
Well, you actually wrote this script for Dickster, and then you reach this point where you got to start putting this thing together. I mean, that's got to be extremely scary moment, because I mean, now it's go time. You got to put these people together, and you're the boss. What next?
Right. The funny thing, Cameron, that happened was, right before the night before we started shooting it, I had contacted this actor named Robert Dix, D-I-X. The character was originally named Dix, Dick Dix. I'd been walking down the Vine Street one day, and I saw William Dix, and I was thinking, Dick Dix, that's a great name. So that's what got me started. And so anyway, to make a long story short, we were going to make an offer to Robert to be in the movie. And he was so offended by the use of his name. He read the script and he was steaming. He sent me an email. He said, if you use that name, I'm going to sue you. So I'm like, oh my God, we can't use the name. I mean, when you're a little movie, you do not even want to hear the words lawsuit, let alone have somebody do it, because, you don't have the resources to fight that. So the night before, I'm laying there going, because for a year and a half, I've been thinking, Dick Dix, Dick Dix, Dick Dix. And now it's Dick who? Dick what? So suddenly it just hit me like a bolt of lightning, Dick Dickster, because Dickster is a combination of Dick plus monster, right? Dickster. So I thought, that's it, Dick Dickster. So I don't know how many times we say it in the movie, but we say it a lot. And, it's sort of a repetition thing you do, and especially with the name like that. And it's a funny name. The distributors, the original title was They Want Dick Dickster. And they said, do you mind if we change the title to Dick Dickster? Just Dick Dickster. And I'm like, well, you're Lionsgate. No, I don't mind at all. You know more about distribution than I do. So by all means, let's call it Dick Dickster. So that's what it's become. So I'm still in the process of, trying to make this thing a cult hit. And I really want to get more eyeballs on it. So, I'm still working on it. I'm not done with it. I mean, there's a great line that the great actress Lauren Bacall said. She was infamously with Humphrey Bogart when she was 19 and he was 48. There's another Dick Dickster relationship. But she said, hey, if you haven't seen a movie, that means that it's not old. A movie's always new unless you've seen it. So that's the approach you have to take in this game these days.
I texted you yesterday. Actually, you responded to me. You were up at like 4:30 this morning, which I was like, "What?" He's texting at 4:30. But you used the word poon, and I was thinking that the only well-known work that used the word poon was maybe Ted Nugent, and then I remembered the movie Fletch. But it's not. And I mentioned when I was a kid.
That's right.
We thought. Yeah. And when I was a kid, we used that we said that word all the time. And then I went to college and I was, with a bunch of new guys, and then what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, no, but it's a funny word, right? I was looking for something that, sort of rhymed with doom, and poon was what I, ended up using. So, I mean, it's funny just when you say it. So, eat poon or die. They made me scream that at the end of the movie. So I was like, yeah, let's go for it. I like it.
So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to say, when I edited Dickster, I mean, that's really who makes the movie is the guy that cuts it, right? So I had Final Cut, and I had help from an editor, obviously, because he's got the equipment. But I put everything together. My sequence. I mean, the original. The director delivered the first cut was 2 hours and 11 minutes. Well, you can't have a comedy that's 2 hours and 11 minutes, so I had to cut it down to 87 minutes, and that's hard to do because you love the footage, you love the actors, it's funny. You don't want to get rid of it, but you have to because it's, the thing in Dickster is I'm going for what I always called farce pace. I like talking heads, but I don't want them to blabber on for 2-3 minutes. So if you see in the movie, the way I use them as a Greek chorus. Everyone has short declarative sentences that either support or deny what the action of the plot is. Oh, Dick is this, he's that. Dick is, I kept it like jabs in boxing is the way I thought of it. So, Christopher Guest, who makes all the funny mockumentaries about Hollywood, best picture and all that.
Love it, yeah, best of show.
Yeah, he's great, but his talking heads, they'll sit there and they'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and it's funny. They're funny actors, right? But that's not the pace I was going for. If you think of remember record players, right? There was 16 and a half, 33 and 45 and 78 speeds. Well, I wanted a film that was playing at 78. I didn't want 16 or 33 or 45. I wanted it fast, and furious, if you will, for a comedy.
Yeah.
I want to keep hitting you, jabbing you, and before you even know you've been hit, I'm already on to the next blow. So that's kind of the conceit of it.
So we jumped ahead a bit. Describe the premise of the movie for those who haven't seen it, because we're going to try to get some people to watch this.
Sure. Well, Dick is a down on his luck director forced to remake his only hit horror film into porno, and so this is a huge assault on his ego. But he's desperate for the money, so he has to do it. And hijinks ensue. I mean, it's a fish out of water story, but in the end, well, I don't want to give away the end, but there's one person wins. And everybody else is, loser.
I think that one of the things that is happening right now is we're inundated with so many things to watch. And of course, right now during this pandemic, there's all kinds of stuff crawling out of the woodwork, including porn. I think everybody can have sex. So just about everybody could possibly, not that you'd want to watch it, but could possibly do a porn movie. And then but what I'm getting at is the fact that there is a lot of stuff out there that nobody's had exposure to, and there's some amazing good movies. One of my favorite that nobody's ever heard of by a director named Jeff Warzig. I can't get people to watch it, but it's one of the most brilliant movies I've ever seen. So,
which is it?
It's called Half Japanese, the Band That Would Be King, and
The Man Who Would Be King.
Half Japanese, the band. So it's about a band.
Band?
Yeah, these brothers have this band, and it's a documentary. And the band immediately starts putting together box sets and things like that. Not they put out a 45 back in the 70s and then immediately go to this box set, and it's just this crazy pace. And anyway, Jeff Warzig's an amazing director, and I'm going to have him on. But it's called Half Japanese, the Band That Would Be King. And he's one of those kind of people who who is just so incredibly creative, and there's so many people out there, but there's so little time, especially for me. I'm a busy guy to watch this stuff, and I really, really love to look for these obscure things.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of passion involved in that because, and that's the one thing about Dick. I mean, is, he's an independent filmmaker. And so these guys, when Nick Vallelonga, before he won the 2 Academy Awards, I mean, he would go 3 or 4 years between projects trying to raise the money. Oh, we got the money. Nope, money fell out. But he believed in his scripts and he kept going and he kept fighting. And so when he wrote Green Book, he sent me the script and I read it and I said, prepare your Oscar speech. You're going to win. You're going to win for this. And sure enough, he did. And of course, they didn't make it easy on him. He had to kowtow to their politics. And I mean, it was really ugly stuff. And, that's the way Hollywood is.
Well, I think that's another thing to think about, too, is the hard life of the scriptwriter. My old neighbor was Troy Evans, and one day there's a box of he moved from Montana. I don't know where he's at right now, but he's still on Facebook. But he moved, leaving boxes of stuff by his house somebody's going to throw away. And I drove by or walked by, and there's a whole box of scripts. So I grabbed those scripts, and I took them home, and just looking through all these old scripts that he had obviously somebody sent, and some of the writers would put letters in there, and they were name dropping and things like that. And I thought, wow, that's got to be such a hard life to write your first script and even the second script if the first one takes off.
Writers never really get any respect, unless you're able to parlay it into a producing or a directing gig, which is, of course, what they do now. But the great line is, I forget who said it, but they said, "Oh, writing is easy. All you do is stare at a blank piece of paper until drops of blood form on your forehead." So, that's what it is. And especially screenwriting. I mean, all kinds of great novelists tried to be screenwriters. Hemingway, Faulkner, Fitzgerald. I mean, and they really weren't successful at it because, again, it's so restrictive. But again, people send me scripts, right? And I can tell on the first page whether I'm going to like it or not. Is it formatted correctly? Do they know the rules of the road? I mean, I don't like driving with people that don't know the rules of the road. I don't know about you. I think it's a sin out in Montana. I mean, like if you're on the Autobahn in Germany and you're not using your turn signal and you're driving 140 miles an hour, they're going to be upset at you for not using that turn signal. You have to know the rules of the road, and that's what screenwriting is so hard. I mean, this guy, it's a funny story. Somebody says, "Can this guy send you a script?" And I said, "Sure, send me the script. I'll take a look at it." So I get it, and I'm like, "Oh no, what is this? It's horrifying, And so then he says to me, "Look, can you get me Steve Carell and Scarlett Johansson to be in this?" I'm like, "Huh? What? Are you crazy?" I mean, first of all, I said, "Well, how much budget do you have?" And he goes, "I'm going to have $3 million." I'm like, "You can't even get. You can't see. Look, I want you to Google Scarlett Johansson's salary, please. It's $20 million a picture. You're not going to. Her agent's never going to let her be in an unknown director's movie, $3 million movie. The only way you have a chance at something like that is if the part is so compelling that the actor says, I have to play this. I don't care how much money they got. I don't care who's directing it. I've got to play this part." Well, there's very few writers, first-time writers especially, who can do that. The guy who wrote Gran Torino for Clint Eastwood, that was his first movie. And, it was tailored perfectly for Mr. Eastwood. And when he read it, he was like, I am doing this movie. And so, it's a great movie. I mean, it's brilliant stuff. Of course, he's, legend. I mean, that always cracks me up. People call me legend, hashtag the legend. I'm like, no. Clint Eastwood is legend. I'm just an actor.
I talked to Larry Hankin a couple weeks ago, and his first big movie was with Clint Eastwood in Alcatraz, and he told me he sat down, he's watching Alcatraz, and he's watching the credits, and it says co-starring Larry Hankin in it.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It blew his mind, and I was like, and then where do you go from there? It's it's Clint Eastwood, but
Yeah, you go on to the next one, and you hope that Clint hires you again. I mean, that's the game with writers and directors, right? I mean, I did 6 or 7 movies with Nick Vallelonga, but I wasn't in the big one. I mean, it just didn't work out for me on that one. But, I don't, you can't hold grudges. You can't be in everything your friends do. I mean, that's the thing people don't realize. When a movie is cast, by the time I got into actual casting for Dickster, I already had 2/3 of the cast assembled, through friends and friends. The director had friends that he wanted in. The producer had friends that he wanted in. And so, what happens in Hollywood is a major talent agency like CAA or ICM or Endeavor. Those are the big boys. They get a movie. They represent the producer. They represent the director. And then they cast the movie with all their clients. Why wouldn't they? They want to send the money somewhere else. They're going to get their 10% as much as they can up and down the board. So by the time the movie gets out to what's known as the breakdowns, everybody's just bottom feeding for what's left over. All the good stuff is already gone. So unless you're an actor that is with an agency that packages, you're going to be eating crumbs for a long time. That's for sure.
What kind of changes are you seeing right now since, like, let's say the difference between 2010 and now, and the ability to create on a computer and these cameras that you can buy right now that are micro? I mean, what's happening?
The cameras have changed the game more than anything. I mean, the ability for anybody to buy a Sony 7D is there. In fact, you can get 2 of them. And now you're in business if you've got 2 cameras. But, of course, you have to have a story, and it always comes down to the story. Is it compelling? Do people want to spend, 2 hours in the dark with these characters? So that doesn't go away just because you have the technology which enables you to deliver a product. Again, you still, that was the advantage that I had on Dickster. I knew that the advantage that I had was talent. I had the access to the best talent in the world in Hollywood, and they would come and do this part for me because they were my friends, and they would give me their very best. And that's what they did, and so that makes all the difference in the world. I didn't have the money to buy all those costumes. They costumes themselves for me. And, that again, if I had the budget, I'd be happy to spend it on them, but I didn't. And they still gave me their all. So unless you have the talent at every position, that was what enabled Dickster. Was my cousin was working at the asylum, which made the mockbusters, and I'd done a couple of them. I did Mega Python versus Gatoroid with Debbie Gibson and Tiffany. And frankly, it's one of the funniest movies I was ever involved in. I mean, when I watch stuff for the first time, when I haven't seen what the editors have done with it, I like to watch it alone. I do not like to watch it with other people. I like to see, watch how they've made the movie. And so I watched that movie by myself, and I was literally rolling on the floor with laughter. I was like, okay, I can tell people I'm in this because it's good. So, because I had no idea. I mean, when you make it, you're like, well, Mary Lambert's a great director. She had done Pet Sematary. I mean, she knew her stuff. And so you're just hopeful that all the pieces will come together. But again, you have no control. All you can do is say your lines and then hope. I mean, there were times when I would be on an episode of The Office and I wouldn't know if I was even going to be in it anymore, right? I did it. I filmed it, but they might cut you out. So there were times I wouldn't even tell people that I was going to be on, and they would go, "Oh, wait, you were on. Why didn't you let me know?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't know if I was still going to be. I didn't know if I was still going to be in the episode." Okay, because sometimes you get cut out. It's just and that's just a function of time. I mean, The Office, it was 23 minutes, right? And so sometimes they would beg for an extra 10 seconds from the network. We need 23 minutes and 10 seconds, and they would go, "Okay, we'll take a little piece off that commercial revenue for you."
Dickster is available on Amazon Prime. I'm an Amazon Prime member. I was trying to watch it on YouTube last night and ended up having a problem. It's there, but it's also on Amazon Prime.
It's on Google Play. It's on Redbox. It's on all those streaming services. There's too many of them to even remember. But Amazon Prime I think is where most people watch it. Psycho Cop's on Amazon Prime for free, so
Is it?
you can go there and watch Psycho Cop.
Man, I haven't watched that forever.
I would prefer that you watch Psycho Cop Returns. It's a little racier, it's more fun. Adam Rifkin's a great director, and his stamp's all over it.
Wow.
Of course, we had our moments. We had to wrestle for control. I mean, it's his movie, but it's also my movie. I'm the guy. I'm the one up there. So once we figured out what that balance was, then we were fine. That's usually the thing between writers and directors or actors and directors. On the first Psycho Cop, I let the director control me too much. I acquiesced to what he wanted, and that's a painful lesson that young actors have to learn. Is not to give away too much. You still have to keep some for yourself.
So Dickster on Amazon Prime, you can click on your name, and are you in all these movies? I clicked on your name. The Awakening?
Yes, I'm in The Awakening.
So I'm assuming that's the Mountain Man, protecting the king faster.
Oh yeah. They're all there. My motto was, if somebody offers me a job, I'm going to say yes. I learned that from Stephanie Powers, the great actress, who was involved with Robert Wagner and had that series Heart to Heart, right? And we did this little special together, The Secret World of Dreams. And so I was, I would always talk to these actors that I worked with to learn from them. For instance, I would go research them and learn something obscure about their career, and then I would talk to them about that, not about the famous stuff. Like when I met Robert Duvall, I'm in awe of Robert Duvall. He's my favorite actor, right? I love that guy. I mean, he's like Morgan Freeman. He's never given a bad performance. If you can find one, I want to see it, because every time I watch him, I'm like, man, this guy is just effortlessly good. It's unbelievable. So I meet him. And he was on the tango floor. We were at this club that Jack Nicholson owned, and this little, it was called Helena's. It was in the 80s. And so Duvall was out on the dance floor tango dancing, and I was standing there watching him. And after the dance was over, he comes over and he introduces himself to me. He's like, "Hi, I'm Bobby Duvall." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Mr. Duvall. I'm Bobby Shafer. Can I buy you a beer?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, man. I'll have a beer." So I buy him a Heineken, and we stand there and we get to talk. And I knew this movie that he had done that nobody knew. It's called Tomorrow. It was written by Horton Foote. And it's one of the greatest, low-budget independent films I've ever seen. And, of course, he's phenomenal in it. So the minute I say to him, I'm really a big fan of Tomorrow, he's like, "Oh, is that right? Why do you like that movie?" And I said, "Well, when they come and take the kid away from you, it's maybe one of the most powerful scenes ever. And so now we're buddies, right? Because I'm not talking to him about Apocalypse Now or The Great Santini or even, my favorite picture of his, the one that Bruce Beresford did, Tender Mercies. Have you ever seen Tender Mercies, Cameron? If not, you should watch that immediately. He plays Max Sledge. He's this washed-up old country singer. And he lands with Tess Harper and reclaims his life and his voice. And they gave him the Academy Award for it. So, that was the only one that he won. But after you watch that, you'll go, Shafer knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I like Robert Duvall. He's
yeah,
amazing guy. This to me it's really interesting that you were in 2 Charlton Heston movies. Who can say that? I'm not a huge Charlton Heston fan, but oh my God, when I first saw Planet of the Apes, it blew in a theater, it blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is I became a huge fan of Heston later on after I started really watching his work. And the golf course that I would go to in Studio City was frequented by his son, Fraser. So Fraser and I became fast friends because of my interest in his dad. And Fraser makes documentaries about his dad now. He's got all this footage. There's a great book that Charlton wrote called An Actor's Life. and it's his journals from when he was at the top of the game. I mean, he was the #1 box office star in Hollywood, and so he's traveling to Rome, and so these journals are just full of great knowledge. And he was like Burt Lancaster. I mean, in the sense they're both completely underrated now. These kids today, they have no idea. It was funny. I was coaching this redheaded actress, right? And I said, you should really go watch some Anne Margaret movies. And she looks at me, she goes, who's that? And I'm like, the greatest redhead in the history of cinema. That's who. Right. I said, go rent Viva Las Vegas. And if you can capture 1/10 of that energy, you'll be in business.
But yeah, also Heston in Soylent Green. And
yeah, that's great. That's become much more relevant of late. I mean, I think a lot of people
exactly. So what's up next? What do you got going on? I mean, obviously, just about everybody's lives are on hold right now, but I mean, you can't steer away from the creative process or your desire to do something.
I'm writing. I mean, so that's good enough for me. It's funny, this person here where I'm living now in West Virginia said, well, we can get you to be on the stage. And I'm like, no. I don't want to be on the stage. If I wanted to be on the stage, I'd stay in Hollywood where the big stage is. I'm not traveling to the burbs to be on stage. There's some people who want to do some films with me, but again, I'm interested. There's a Psycho Cop 3 script that I wrote that I would do. At first, for a long time, I didn't want to redo the part again. And then I heard somebody was interested in doing it, and I got very possessive. I was like, that's mine. I mean, imagine if you're Robert Englund and then suddenly Jackie Earle Haley is Fred Krueger. I mean, what in the world is that? I mean, that's a lateral move. Why would you replace, they probably couldn't pay him what he wanted, but still, I mean, you feel like, hey, that's my movie. Nobody's going to be able to do it better than I could. But at a certain point, you have to realize, Father Time comes to catch up with you like he does with all great athletes. You lose a step. And funny enough, we were talking about before about memorizing lines or lyrics. That's Jeremy Irons, who's a great actor, who's been at the top of the game for 40 years. They asked him what was the hardest part about getting older as an actor. He said, the fear of not being able to remember my lines. So I had watched Patricia O'Neill, the Oscar-winning actress, and she was doing this little movie with Susan Day, and childhood hero of mine was Timothy Bottoms, who I later got to work with, which was great thrill. And because I always respected his game so much. And Patricia had been felled by a stroke, so she could not remember her lines. But again, here she was an Academy Award-winning actress. Every morning on the way we were in Nashville, and every morning we were in a limousine, and we would drive like 30 minutes to the set. Well, I would rehearse her lines with her, to try to. So it was really a big rush for me to be rehearsing with Patricia Neal. How often do you get to do that? And but the minute she would get on the set, she wouldn't be able to remember them because of the effects of the stroke. So they had to do cue cards for her and get an earbud for her. Somebody would, Brando used to work with that like that too, with that earbud, where somebody would tell him his lines, and then that's why he always looked like he was mumbling and trying to find out what he was supposed to say. It wasn't just an affectation; it was also part of the reality of the thing.
Well, man, I appreciate you being here. I wish you the best of luck, and we're going to promote this movie, and I want people to watch it because I'm going to watch it tonight on Amazon Prime. Also available on YouTube, and
watch it because it's funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. I watched the trailers.
It's not politically correct. I don't do politically correct. I think everybody's a target. And as far as I'm concerned.
And you play one of the best drunks I've ever seen.
Thank you. I mean, it's the hard. Here's the thing about playing a drunk. A drunk doesn't want you to know he's drunk, right? So he's always trying to act sober. He's not trying to act drunk. Actors always make the mistake of trying to act drunk. Drunks don't want you to know they're drunk. So if you just slip in little pieces of it here and there, and again, that goes back to when I was in school. I learned how to. I was playing a lot of Tennessee Williams characters, and they're all drunks, So I had to learn early on how to do that. And Dick is drunk the whole movie. And the reason for that, Cameron, is that you are now able to get away with more than you would if he wasn't drunk, right? You forgive a drunk for being obnoxious and being aggressive. Usually rude and aggressive go together. And so that's what Dickster does. He's rude and aggressive about it. So we cut a drunk some slack for how stupid they are.
Great night. Starting off with Susan Day, that was something I didn't know. Your Wikipedia page is lacking, and I don't know if you're trying to hide something or.
I've never. No, I just never worked on it. In fact, I was thrilled when somebody put all my credits on there. I was like, "Who did that?"
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I'd never mentioned Susan for 30 years because I didn't want anybody to think that I was trying to make it off of that. I mean, right. I didn't want to be Mr. Day. I wanted to be Mr. Shafer. So,
Mr. Susan Day.
I was Mr. Day for a while, and it was fine. But I had to be my own man. And, that's the way West Virginians roll. I mean, ambitious and independent. And so, again, you have to make it on your own. You can't, a hand up is always nice. Don't get me wrong. I've got a few of those over the years, and, I'm always grateful for it. But you still have to set your own course, right? You can't paint by the numbers. You have to be your own person. And that's the great American P.T. Barnum said the goal of every man should be to be the best in his field of endeavor, not, getting by or doing okay, but to try to be the best at what you do. And so I think if you use that as your guiding light, you'll find the ambition and the inner fortitude to suffer because there's plenty of suffering in life. Everybody gets a piece of the crap sandwich, at some point. Here's your crap sandwich. Enjoy. Would you like another bite? Thank you. Yes.
And yes, we do. I think that's a good way to end this because I've had a crap sandwich or two and now it's my turn. Appreciate you so much. And I love what you do, man. Thank you very much.
All right. I appreciate all the interest. I really do. And I wish you luck.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good night, sir.
We'll talk again.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
You can stop by when you're in the hills of West Virginia.
Love it.
All right, man. Take care of yourself. Be safe.
You too.
Oh, yeah. Always.